Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator, just reminding you that we're going to have a 5,000th subscriber bathtacular on the 5th of September, 2024, 2:45 Pacific time. So you got to work out your relationship to the world based solely on my place in California. 2:45, we'll stay for an hour or so. I'm getting a little early because I know people in Europe are going to, we have a lot of people we'd like to come in, and this gives everybody hopefully a chance to get there. I know it won't fit for everybody. Anyway, I'm going to bring a cocktail, and you can bring a cocktail or a virtual cocktail. And I found that I have to use Chrome. I need Google Chrome to run a live feed. Just come to the our YouTube channel. It should be running live at 2:45. All right? Today, clear mountain water. Dodo-free bathtub. She's in the other room having a great time. I just checked on her. Lucky's downstairs howling at anybody who walks by the front door because she's an anxious dog. But her medication has kicked in, so she's a little bit better. And this is what we call this our vintage science fiction paperback Hodgepodge. It's not a roundabout. I sometimes mistake it's a Hodgepodge, and you don't want to get your Hodgepodge mixed up with your roundabout, or you'll never sleep. You'll never get any sleep at night. So these are just books, but from mainly from the period that I read a lot of these old books in the 60s and the 70s. And I read all these vintage books, and I really loved them. And I loved the way they looked, and I have a good. They're just sort of nostalgic, and some of them are really good, and some are not quite as good as I remember them, but they're still worth going back to. This is one of the reasons I have trouble reading new writers. Is, when I was 17 to 20s, there were so many writers I wanted to read. I wanted to read everything by a lot of these writers, and I'm still trying to catch up with the writers I wanted to read in the 70s. So I'm not against modern writers. I just have trouble keeping up with my own interests. Start off with A.E. Van Vogt. I didn't read a lot of Van Vogt when I was a kid. I did read Slan, but I found him a little crazy. But now, as I get older, I kind of like a little crazy once in a while. And there is so much craziness in this book. This is kind of a generational starship book. I did not know this one. A lot of these novels were fix-ups. So he published them in the 40s, 1947, 1950, 1963. It's like 3 novellas, I think. And then he stitches them together. And it's just a crazy book. It's basically the whole basic premise is that they're going off in this generational starship and they get lost. I think that's part of it. And then all these different families. And it seems like every generation there's like a captain who's trying to get them to their destination, and then all these people rabble who want to take over, the mutiny. There's like a constant mutinies. People are constantly about writing a mutiny. And there's a character here. I didn't even remember this part. 131. Some weird stuff about women in this. I was going to read a passage of it, but he talks about how women go into outer space and it makes them super passive. And they're marrying these men or have like more than one wife because the women need. I don't remember exactly how it works, but it's a pretty crazy book. Anyway, I kind of got lost about 2/3 of the way through this book, and I finished it anyway. But it was a lot of fun, and I you have to be a bit crazy to read them. Here's a book I've never read, an Alan Dean Foster book. I just like all these old books. Look at this cool old cover. This book is called The Tar I'm Krang. Sorry, I probably pronounced that completely wrong. Like Louise Glick. Louise, not Gluck, Glick. Tar I'm Krang. It's probably pronounced Tur Oyum Krang. 1972. Dedicated to John Campbell, who published a lot of Alan Dean Foster. All I know is I never read any Alan Dean Foster because he used to publish a lot of books, and he also published a lot of novelizations of like Star Wars movies, and I can't remember the Black Hole. I think he did. He did lots of novelizations of movies, which I always thought meant you're a terrible writer. I've heard he's actually pretty good. Lucky's got to be quiet down there. And anyway, so I finally read the Tar I'm Krang just for the heck of it, and I had a really good time. It's very far future, kind of crazy ideas. The central character is a young kid who has some sort of precognitive abilities, and he has some lizard that hangs around his neck. It changes point of view quite a bit. It goes out into, it's kind of really all over in outer space, and I forget what they're trying. It's the start of some big stellar saga, and I had a good time. It was better written than I expected, and I remember a friend of mine did like I think that's why I always had him in the back of my mind. I thought I'd give him a try, and I'll probably try to read another one of his books. I put this out here. I've been meaning to talk about this for a while. I read this about 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago when we first started this. I read it as a kid, and I reread it about 7 or 8 years ago. Norman Spinrad's The Men in the Jungle. Now look at that's. Oh, I should show these cool covers. Well, I showed you those. This is kind of cool in a kind of horrible way. Is it Belmont Books? No, Leisure Books. Anyway, terrible cover, really cheesy. There's a much better cover from Avon. I used to have the Avon paperback, which is kind of a brilliantly horrific cover. And Norman Spinrad, you may know, he's most famous for writing The Iron Dream, which is the science fiction novel that Hitler would have written if Hitler had been alive. I read that when I was a kid. It was a trip. He's famous for also Bug Jack Barron. This is my most memorable book I've read of Spinrad's. It's absolutely kind of brilliant and horrific at the same time. It's about these two, I can't remember it that well because it's been several years now, but it's about this trio of people, a couple guys and a woman who travel around the universe starting revolutions on planets so that they can kind of control the governments. And they go to this horrible planet which is run by cannibals and just total violence, some totally super sick religious order. The religious order is just totally evil. And they basically just fatten people up and eat them. Anyway, one guy, in order to become part of this horrible planet, gets himself involved in these horrible ceremonies. Another guy goes off to work with the villagers who are basically being slaughtered, and tries to turn them into guerrilla war. It's a brilliant, horrifying book and a lot of fun and kind of it's clearly a satire or a comic satire on American imperialism. The Men in the Jungle by Norman Spinrad. It's vintage. It's part of the Hodgepodge, but it's a sort of a brilliant book. Don't judge that book by that cover. Finally, the most fun I had reading these this is what I look for, is Jack Vance. We've talked about Jack Vance. And I read 2 novellas from the 50s. Jack Vance's stories are good, but his best stuff tends to be like 50 to 100 page novellas. And this is 2 of them. It's a double ace double. One's called House of Ism. It sounds kind of almost like a porn novel. They're both from the early 50s and then reprinted in the early 60s in these kind of cool editions. And House of Ism is about a planet where they grow houses. It's the whole first half of the book is describing how they grow houses that people can live in, and then they export these seeds and these plants. And the story itself is sort of both of these novellas have a kind of spy murder mystery plot that controls them a bit. But for the most part, the story itself is just kind of an excuse to have these great ideas floating around. And anyway, I really like that. I enjoy the House of Ism. And The Son of the Tree is another very good one. It's about a planet in which you don't really understand what's happening till the end of that novella. It's about a planet that has this huge tree. It reminds me of Philip Jose Farmer's The Stone God Awakens. And it's a gigantic tree, and this planet is trying to make some political alignment with another planet, and they send a branch of that tree because their whole religion is based around this tree, and they try to extend and make a connection with another planet. I won't go much further into that, but the actual story is quite cool, and there's a funny little narrative twist in the way it works, where the central character and what his purpose in the novella doesn't come clear to the end. Anyway, Vance is always quite good. These are not, by far and away, nowhere near his best stuff. They were just quite quickly written, probably. They're nowhere near as good as the Dying Earth stuff, but I haven't read a bad Jack Vance book, and I enjoyed reading those. Okay, there's your Hodgepodge. Really Hodgepodge-esque. However incoherent I was, it had nothing to do with alcohol, because all I do is drink pure mountain water, and we'll hopefully see everybody at the 5,000th Spectacular. Don't forget, you can still join the International Bathing Alliance. It's still a rock bottom $0, costs $0, rock bottom prices $0, and 2-3 members you can join. You can join your whole family up for pretty much $0. Okay, so 5 people, 5 times 0, it's $0, costs nothing. Okay, stay safe.